Political turmoil in Ukraine, his toughest fight yet. In the interview, opposition politician Vitali Klitschko.
Mr. Klitschko, it's good to have you with us. We're here in Kiev, right next to Independence Square. The protests have been going on for about 2 weeks. Thousands of people are turning out every day. What's going on?
The protests first started when our government and our president put the agreement with the EU on ice. A week before the summit in Lithuania, there was great disappointment. We must integrate into Europe, our whole society, because for 22 years, Ukraine has been living with the hope of becoming a democratic modern country. It hasn't happened. We've been talking about it for a long time, but it's one thing to talk about something and another thing to do it. So everyone had high hopes. Right up until the last minute when Viktor Yanukovych flew to Vilnius, we kept hoping. But the agreement wasn't signed. All the partners, the European partners, said the door was open. It wasn't the fault of the Ukrainian people. It was the fault of the Ukrainian government for not signing. One of the most important conditions for signing the treaty was freedom for political prisoners. But even Yulia Tymoshenko said, "I don't want to be an obstacle. I'll withdraw my demand to be released." The association agreement has to be signed. But despite that, the association agreement was not signed.
I get the impression that the protests are now about much more. It's no longer just about the association agreement with the European Union. The people are now really angry.
We want to become a European country because we're Europeans, with our history, our mentality. Geographically, we are Europeans. But life here is not up to standards. So lots of students, lots of young people went out onto the streets and said, "We'll stand up and support the association agreement." Then came the day after the summit in Vilnius. At 4 in the morning, a special police unit brutally attacked the students. And the images of the brutality touched the whole country. Everyone was really disappointed in Viktor Yanukovych and the way in which power was being used against the people, against students, children almost, between 17 and 22 years old. The disappointment was huge. And the next day there were demonstrations. The capital city had never seen such massive crowds of people. We estimate that it was 500,000 people. Reuters looked at Google Maps and said up to 800,000 people took to the streets.
You called on people to protest. I think I remember you saying that if there were enough people, you'd be able to change things. Many people then turned up, many more than you expected. Were you surprised there were so many people?
Really surprised, really surprised. I didn't expect so many people to come and protest. People came and said, "We are here, and we won't give up, and we will defend our rights." And then it got even more serious. People got angry because there was no reaction from the president, no reaction from the prime minister, no reaction from the interior minister. After all that violence, then on Tuesday we had a parliamentary session, and our demand was for the ministers to step down. The Prime Minister gave a speech apologizing. That was the only response. But it wasn't enough. Most people don't want to accept an apology. They want someone to take responsibility.
So who is responsible? Who do you think should bear the responsibility? Who should step down?
The students were brutally attacked. More than 50 journalists were injured. More than 50 people are in the hospital. 13 young people were arrested and sentenced at 2 in the morning to at least 2 months in prison. And they might have to stay there for up to 5 years. And so people were angry, and there was no proper reaction. The president flew off to China at that critical moment, during a political crisis in our country. The TV news report said it all. There was a report from the main square in Kiev, and then the next report showed the president in a museum in China. People can't understand that.
Are you demanding that the president, Yanukovych, resigns?
The president, the current president, Viktor Yanukovych, has concentrated power in his own hands, and he's responsible for everything that happens in our country. And we're determined that he must bear the responsibility. Who else could be responsible? We're demanding the resignation of the government, including Prime Minister Azarov. We want the Interior Minister to be held responsible because he was in charge of the police units, and we want all the political prisoners, and I want to make clear that the demonstrators are political prisoners. All of them should be set free.
Could it be that Viktor Yanukovych, the president, maybe didn't know about the police officers attacking the students, about the blood being spilt? Could they have acted on their own initiative, out of over-eagerness? Yanukovych did say the next day that it was wrong, that those responsible would be held to account.
Yes, but so what? We have to find the people responsible, and so far no one has been identified. We know how the government works. It makes a lot of promises, but doesn't take any action. And so people want the resignation of the ministers, the prime minister, and our president. Because we understand the whole system. Because Ukraine is unfortunately known throughout Europe as Europe's most corrupt country. We have to get rid of the whole system. And we're demanding elections for a new parliament, a new government, and a new president.
You say the president's not the problem, but the system is. What's the problem with Ukraine's political system?
The problem is the political system because the whole system is corrupt, very corrupt. And Ukraine is one of the most corrupt countries in Europe, and the economy isn't working. There is no free market. There are monopolies. 7 million Ukrainians are unemployed or working abroad. There's no social safety net. The whole country is unhappy because the whole system doesn't work, not for the country and not for the people. It only works for a group of people who are multiplying their wealth. There are a lot of examples of wealth and poverty existing side by side.
But can you or the protesters change that? Your goal now is to get rid of the president and the government, but what then? Is there a concrete plan to solve all of these problems?
The most important thing is that we must sign the association agreement. That is our plan. How can we implement reforms that are oriented towards Europe? We need to reform the legal system. We need to change the laws. We need to get rid of the whole system. There are examples we can follow. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. Our Western neighbors, like Poland, for example, is already part of the European Union and has made real progress. The Czech Republic, Slovakia, Hungary, they're good examples of the potential for reform. You can go there and see from talking to people and what income the country has. Of course, it's a process. It takes a while. People understand there will be a painful period. But despite that, Ukraine is ready for reforms because we're tired of living this way.
You've been world boxing champion many times. You travel the whole world. You're popular at home and abroad, and you aren't exactly poor. You don't need to do all of this. You're famous, you have money, you're well off. Why are you taking part in such a difficult process?
Because this is my country. My roots are here. My family lives here. My friends live here. And my heart is here. You should never forget where you come from, and I'm certain that I know what European values are. And I would like to bring those values to Ukraine.
Don't you sometimes worry about disappointing people, that you could fail?
That is a big fear of mine. That is a big fear. That's what drives me, because the people believe in me. The people trust me, and I must not disappoint them. That's why I'm doing this, and there's no going back. I have to move forward, and our goal is to make our country into a European country.
Thank you very much for talking with us.
You're welcome.